To err is human. For this reason, we've made mistakes as we conquered frontiers. And with skies beckoning, we tried and tried to fly, but physics wasn't on our side. Then with a little bit of hot air, we finally beat gravity and powered right into the wild blue yonder. And it wasn't long before we slipped into the First World War. Amazingly, more people were killed by poor decisions and sloppy training than machine guns and dogfights. But with lessons learned, we blitzed our way through into the Second World War. And aviation began to streamline. More power, more dials, more speed, but sadly, a lot more stress. So we introduced science, and the first rudimentary simulators started to trick reality. Then finally, the dust settled, and bombs were replaced by bums. And we soared passengers into the jet age. Pilots went from heroic risk-takers to wearing gold bars and wrangling with computers. And the airlines grew and grew. But so did the human factors, and they came thick and fast. And after several tragedies in the 70s, safety refocused on communication and teamwork. And in the 90s, we really started to look at the whole picture, not just at work and second jobs, but at home and in play. So now we recognize that human error can occur anywhere, anytime, in any system. So as we build our knowledge of human behavior, we'll continue to boldly go where we've never been before.
Each facet of human factors is interwoven with the other. If an organisation doesn't invest in safety, it's impossible for people to be safe.
Aviation is often held up as the paragon of new technology and the future already here. And yet, it's only people, it's only the human who can hold together this complex, shifting patchwork of technologies, of communication requirements, of pressures and goal conflicts. It's only the human who can do that. If we don't understand the human factor, we don't understand safety in aviation at all.
Good safety culture, supported by management, is the foundation, so people feel empowered and part of the bigger picture. Like all things, it's about enabling people so everyone contributes from the bottom up with good reporting, action and feedback.
Safety culture has as much definitional precision as a cloud.
As grasping at smoke.
The only way to create a really good safety culture is to believe in it. It's top down, bottom up. Everyone's got to own it.
The right people and the right culture, and it starts at the top.
It starts right from the top.
I define safety culture as a culture that allows the boss to hear bad news.
There is no stupid question in safety.
It needs to be ingrained into the organisation.
Safety is embedded into our processes and our procedures.
And you've got to actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
And that trickles down all the way through.
That we all sort of have each other's backs.
What we want to do is make people think.
Safety first.
They're more than happy to report.
Communication on a regular basis, transparency, openness, being involved.
That healthy sense of unease.
Never kind of rest on your laurels when it comes to safety.
It's really about trust. I can't emphasise that enough.
There's no blame involved.
It's not about blaming people or portioning blame. It's not about that at all. It's just about continuous improvement, really.
And how can we stop it from happening again?
To assess the risks, manage the risks, know that they're there.
Identifying the risks.
You must deal with risk.
But I think the other thing that's really important in a good safety culture is that you concentrate on why things went right.
Because they go right a lot more than they go wrong.
And we grow on the positive.
And that's obviously key to any safety system.
But it's important to recognise that those elements don't just work in isolation. They link to a very strong just culture. We're very strong on building relationships from the start of a person's entering into the business, whether they're a student or an instructor. And the reason for that is we value very much fresh eyes coming into the business. And if we've got a strong relationship, those people are better able to provide us with information quickly about the safety culture of the business. Sometimes they might recognise something that is now no longer relevant, an SOP that's out of date, and that may need to be changed in order to strengthen safety.
Altitude will be limited. We'll probably give us a clearance for airways around 3,000 feet, so we can set that into airways clearance.
Encouraging your staff, students, instructors, whoever it might be, encouraging them to be able to come forward and be vulnerable and say, I made a mistake, I did this. And being able to do that with the head of your operations or anybody else, that's a really key, important part of a company.
It's not my achievement, this safety culture. It is the instructors who live it, who are out there and embracing it.
When students come forward and they do report something, we make sure that they're not punished. And also, as an instructor myself, if I've had an incident, I will be the first to report it.
It's collaboration of everything. The boss needs to be with it, and if he supports it, then you empower the bottom and they'll grow with you.
So the safety culture will determine that when the leader's not around, the people think, act and communicate in a way to maximise their survival. And that only makes great sense.
At the Toll and New South Wales Ambulance Rescue Helicopter Base Bankstown, they face some of the most challenging environments on a day-to-day basis. So a just culture sits at the core of their organisation, and it exists to ensure everyone returns home safely. Heart of Just Culture allows anyone to report a problem or own up to a genuine mistake. The whole organisation must be involved, beginning with the people at the top.
I believe that safety culture is probably the single biggest driver for safety behaviour of people. And when you've got an extremely good safety culture, you'll find even people who've come into that culture will begin to adapt themselves to those behaviours. Yes, the CEO level, they need to be on board and they need to be supportive, but so do all those key people at all the multiple levels, all the strata of your organisation. Otherwise, there'll be a disconnect.
For all operators, the safety management system should be the tier 1 document for their business. Everything should fall out underneath the SMS. So when the challenges come around costs and that, rather than focusing just on margin when they're talking with the client, focus on talking about safety and the systems and bring them in and make them part of the story.
A safety management system is quite simply 4 components with 15 associated elements. The CASA advice and advisory material gives fairly clear guidance on what those are, and they align very closely with safety management systems that exist in other industries, but more importantly with the ICAO model. Many of these organisations will already have elements established in their organisation, and it's just a case of looking at what is required, what they currently have, and doing a very simple gap analysis. Both the CASA material and the ICAO safety management manual give very clear and easy checklists so organisations can identify that gap.
A safety management system is really an illustration of what a lot of us would say is common sense. But why is common sense not that common sometimes? And it's because you're too close to the system. You're too close to the safety issues. If you get the chance to step back out of the system, have a look at the big picture, all of a sudden you can take in where there are hazards, the obvious hazards, some not so obvious. As you go along your day-to-day business, they call it practical drift. Daily activities can sometimes change or move away from a safety behaviour because it's faster, it's easier, it's at the time feels more efficient, or it's cheaper. So you get practical drift away from safety behaviours unless you have the tools in place to give yourself a checkpoint and step back and say, oh, we need to check this. That's where things like a safety management system, checklist tool is a good tool to have as well.
It's getting everyone on board, and it's the culture. I look for a good safety culture. It's having it in the people's mindset, because we have very capable people that are used to being very self-reliant, and it's bringing them back in a bit closer and creating a culture of good communication and proactively being interested in identifying hazards and forwarding the information through our system. Because once you get information, you can do something with it. For a good safety culture to develop, I think it's definitely good leadership.
Organisations will see a safety management system as a regulatory burden, a compliance requirement only, but it's not. It's about an investment in safety, and the long-term effects of that are huge. It doesn't produce income for an organisation, but what it does do is it prevents you having to spend money on damage, incidents, repairs, etc. And furthermore, it creates the long-term safety culture within an organisation that it has a long-term benefit that is immeasurable in a dollar value.
Your SMS system sets the foundation of your safety culture. If you nurture it, it's like your garden. If you look after it, it'll grow well. If you don't look after it, it'll fade away. Safety management system is the core fundamental process of any aviation system.
You might hold a meeting and say, well, last week we had this event, it was handled really, really well, the return was great, let's talk through how that happened. And then it starts to come out, the training was there, all the drills just happened like they should have, it was a clear day, there was no traffic, we could see what was going on, so we just returned and that's why it worked. And tapping into that and saying, okay, so because that training and those drills are working really well, we're going to keep them in place. We're not going to say we don't need them anymore, because we do need them. That's why that event ended well. The chronic unease is very important, but I think also learning why did we do well in that area and hanging on to the foundational stuff that meant that you did well is really crucial.
I think one of the characteristics of a great safety culture is a culture that understands why things go right, because they go right a lot more than they go wrong. But what we don't do is investing in our understanding of what actually makes these things go right. But what we're seeing, and research is pretty much clear in showing this, is that stopping things from going wrong only gets you so far. But what we're increasingly understanding is that we need to recognize, identify, and then enhance the capacities in our people, in our operation, that make things go right.
We talk these days about the concept of fatal risk or critical risk. What is going to kill somebody or leave them permanently disabled? What are your key risks around that? Know what they are and put in measures to protect your system against those risks.
It's not just aircraft operators with a monopoly on safety. On the other side of the microphone, air traffic control have developed an alive and active learning culture.
So one of the key things we do in our system is that we have an open reporting culture and a very, very good self-reporting of incidents.
Everybody here will have had a situation where something's gone wrong, a mistake's been made, some more serious than others, but the bottom line is you report it. If it's required, we investigate what happened and we try and improve from it and try and learn from it.
What's really important to me is people feel comfortable enough to report anything that they think there may be an issue with. It's really important that I see a really good teamwork and that people are working with each other, that they're happy to challenge each other as well to improve general safety and efficiency.
Every time there is an incident or an occurrence of some sort, it is reported through our CIRIS system and it's followed up through the management and it's investigated. It's not a blame, it's what happened, what can we learn from it and how do we prevent it from happening again.
So QF32 wasn't successful because of me or my team necessarily, or even my airline. It's because of the culture in aviation to share information, accept people make mistakes. If that's the human condition, learn from it, build up the human factors so good people come together into perfect teams, and then we can truly be remarkable.